Hello, everyone, and welcome to Together We Stand Partner Appreciation Day. My name is Teresa Cruz, and I am a proud volunteer with TWS. I have to tell you, this foundation is just a few years old, but they truly have made an impact with our military families, making sure that they have been seen, heard, and appreciated. Our goal today is to tell you a little bit about our journey so far, what TWS does, and of course, where we want to go in the future. It's not going to be too long of a day. We hope to have you all wrapped up and out of here at about 8 o'clock tonight. Just kidding. It's going to be an informative hour for you and hopefully one that you are going to enjoy. A little housekeeping before we get going. If you have any questions for our speakers, feel free to put them into the chat room and we will be able to answer them at the end of our broadcast and our speakers. So let's get started. Would you please welcome the co-founder of Together We Stand, Mr. Rick Eckstein. Rick?
Morning, Teresa. How are you?
Oh, doing well.
So thank you very much for that introduction. You're going to hear a bit more from me a little bit later in the program when my wife Lillian and I talk about what motivated us to start this initiative. But my job right now is to introduce our honorary patron. You know, the role of a patron is to bring credibility and support to the organization. And God knows I could use credibility. When we started this organization, I looked around my network to see who I knew. And sure enough, one name came to mind very quickly. In Ottawa, it was pretty much acknowledged that he was the smartest man in the room. And globally, it's acknowledged that he was a respected leader. And that person, of course, was Stephen Harper. When I went to visit him in his office in Calgary, he immediately accepted the position without hesitation. And since then, our casual relationship, I think, has turned into a friendship. And over the past few months, we've actually become business partners. So it's been a pleasure. So ladies and gentlemen, at this stage of the game, please let me direct your attention back to Teresa and a man I am proud to have as a friend, the Right Honorable Stephen Harper.
Thanks so much, Rick. And Prime Minister Stephen Harper is about to join us right now. He was our 22nd Prime Minister. There he is, joining us live from Calgary. Hello, sir. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Teresa, and thanks to both of you. Thanks to Rick for that very kind introduction.
Well, you were our Prime Minister for 9 years and 271 days, but I've heard that private life has just been possibly as busy for you. Before we begin about why we're here today, we'd love to know what you have been doing in private life.
Yeah, very quickly. I spend most of my time running a business. I began a business with basically with former staff members, some government officials. We do consulting, business consulting of various kinds around the world. It's called Harper and Associates. We have a number of affiliates. I have about 27 people full-time now. So we're very busy, and life has been busy in spite of the fact that I can't travel. Obviously, in the last year, I travel very little now. So I'm, like everybody else, I'm on Zoom calls around the world all day. I say life is very good, business is good. It's just very uneventful.
I know a lot of us are feeling the shut-in factor these days, and we've had our wings clipped, that's for sure. I'm curious, you are the honorary patron of Together We Stand. When you were our Prime Minister, how did you feel about leading the Canadian forces while you were in office?
Well, look, it's first of all, it's an enormous responsibility to have authority over the men and women in uniform. I mean, we always have to remember that the military is a calling unlike any other. It's total service. Ultimately, in most cases, your life is on the line at some time or another during your career. And so, you take that when you're Prime Minister or, minister or anybody who has responsibility, you take that with a great degree of seriousness. I did, as you know, I visited our troops around the world. I think I'm the only Prime Minister to have ever visited troops on multiple occasions, actually, in a combat zone on the front line. I have slept at forward operating bases. I also undertook the responsibility whenever we had a member who fell, of phoning the families. It's certainly, not the easiest thing to do, but it's the responsibility that you have when people put their lives on the line and make the ultimate sacrifice. So look, we have a long family history in the Harpers with the military, which I can go into at some point, but look, I met so many just outstanding and tremendous people dedicated to total service in a way that few of us will ever experience in our lives.
We all know that our co-founder, Rick Eckstein, is a hard man to say no to, but that man, he wears his heart on his sleeve. Just curious why you did decide to get involved with Together We Stand.
So it's a really good question because, as I say, I've come out of office, being, I was going to say being quoted honest politician. I came out of office with not a lot of money and a desire to have a business career. And that's where I've been focused. And so, my charitable contributions and involvement in foundations and the like have been fairly limited. I've picked them very carefully. And why have I done that? Why did I join this one then if I've picked them very carefully? First of all, obviously I have a special feeling and a sense of a special responsibility towards the Canadian Armed Forces. And this organization filled a need that I think was critical. There are lots of charities and foundations that serve needs of the Canadian Forces. There are those that work with serving members. There are those that focus on recently retired members, our veterans. There are those that work particularly with injured personnel, badly injured personnel, permanently disabled personnel, and others. But there was not a single foundation in Canada that existed to focus 100% on the families of our serving men and women. And as I believe it's critical for Canada to have a strong and united armed forces, then it is critical that our men and women in uniform can do their jobs with minimal concern for what is happening on their own home front. So it's critical that we ensure that families are supported and appreciated for what they need, for what they do, and the families are appreciated for what they need. And we want our men and women in uniform to perform these critical jobs. They're often dangerous jobs without their minds being back home. So, as I say, it formed a critical need, and Rick and Lillian are, I know them well. They're very dedicated, and having that kind of leadership really matters as well.
You brought up so many great points about why we should be supporting our military and our military families. I'm just curious of what your personal opinion is as to why Together We Stand is so important to the Canadian philanthropic landscape.
Yeah, that's another great question. So as I say, it was filling a purpose, but I would say it's more than that as well. I have, in the space of my political career, frankly, I have been exposed to an awful lot of charities and foundations. And one of the, besides the leadership, besides the mission here, one of the things that attracted me to this mission was that Together We Stand delivers concrete services. And as I said, I've seen a lot of charities and foundations in Canada and around the world. And the best charities and foundations are those that are actually on the ground and can measure their results, like this one. I give to a wide range of charities, but an awful lot of charities, do an awful lot of administration, fundraising, talk shops, etc. It's really important that what it is they're actually doing and actually delivering. And Together We Stand. The mission is clear and the services are clear, and we know exactly what we're achieving.
You've been overseas visiting our troops, as you told us earlier today. I'd love to know, what was your takeaway on some of these visits? Is there anything that stands out in your mind, some of your memories that you take away from your time with our military?
Yeah, look, I guess, I could speak of some specific things, but let me just talk generally what stands out for me. What stands out for me in all of my trips was the diversity of operations and environments that I have seen the members of the Canadian Armed Forces adapt to. I've been with them in the deserts of Afghanistan and the Arabian Peninsula. I've been with them all the way from Hudson Bay to our base at Alert Nunavut, which is the closest place in the world to the North Pole. And so the phrase I like to use, it's a phrase I first heard from former Chief of Defense Staff Walt Matinchuk. He says we have a 100-degree military. It can operate from 50 above zero to 50 below zero with the highest standards of proficiency. That was one of our goals as a government, frankly, as we rebuilt the armed forces after we came to office. And for that, because of that, and because of so much else, our military is, it's on a man for man, woman for woman basis, it is one of the best regarded militaries in the world. So I think it's really important that we show the same regard for our military here in Canada and for the families of the men and women in uniform who make it possible as others show our military.
Prime Minister Harper, it has been an honor and a pleasure hearing from you again. We don't see you as much as we wish that we would, so it's been great that you've been able to share some time with us this morning, with our grateful attendees, and of course, everyone at Together We Stand. Thank you so much, Prime Minister Harper.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Well, now let's get to the heart of the matter. Every story has a beginning, and I'd like to welcome back Rick Eckstein and his wonderful wife, Lillian Eckstein. They are co-founders of TWS. Hello there, Rick and Lillian. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Teresa, and to the Prime Minister, thank you very much for the kind words.
Yes, he was marvelous as always. I'd love to know from both of you, tell us a little bit about your journey, the backstory as to why you founded TWS.
It's an interesting story, but it's one that goes back to practically, or I guess before we were born. Definitely before we were born. Because for us, the story really begins back in 1939 when our parents were in Europe. In 1939, the Germans invaded Czechoslovakia. My father was 7 years old, and my grandfather, hearing about what was happening to Jews in Germany, decided it was time to leave Europe as quickly as possible. He was fortunate enough to get out of Czechoslovakia the day before the Germans closed the borders, and the balance of his family, which was to follow the next day, never made it out. But the relatives, my dad and grandparents and my uncle finally landed in Canada in 1939, penniless, but nevertheless so grateful to be in this great country. Concurrently, in 1939, my mom was living in Poland. She was a 5-year-old girl when the Germans invaded. It was not a good time to be Jewish at that point and in that geography. And in 1941, her family were moved into a ghetto. Her mother was grabbed off the street one day and sent off in a cattle car to a death camp. And her father, knowing, his fate was probably very closely linked, he had a Gentile friend who agreed to take my mom out of the ghetto and save her. And you have to understand what that meant in those days by doing a favor like that. If this fellow had been caught, not only would he be shot, but every member of his family would have been shot. So my 7-year-old mom was smuggled out of the ghetto and sent to live with this man's nephew, who was a priest in a very, very poor parish. Her father was subsequently shot by the Nazis shortly after she left the ghetto, and the priest and his family converted my mom to Catholicism so she would not stand out as a Jew. And she spent a horrible number of years fearing discovery. It's a much longer story, but finally in about 1948, as a 14-year-old girl, my mom landed again in this great country. She had one living relative who was with her, and again, penniless.
Landing penniless in Canada seems to be a theme for our families and for most Jews who arrived after the Holocaust. My parents were both from the same town in Poland. In 1939, the Germans invaded Poland. My father at the time was in the Polish cavalry. He ended up being wounded and defending his country and was placed in a German POW hospital. Now, being a Jew, had he been found out, life would be over, literally. A fellow patient knew my father, gave him his cross to wear and told him, don't say anything. You are now a Christian. That saved my father. At a certain point, there was a prisoner exchange between the Germans and the Poles. And so my father was released. And the first place he went was back to the town where he was from, only to find that there were no Jews left in the town. The town just to tell you, the town where my parents came from, there were approximately 16,000 Jews. Half of the population of that town was now gone. When the Germans approached the town my parents were from, the Jews were driven east, to the east into Russia. At that point, my family, my mother, her two young siblings, her parents, and everyone else were put on cattle cars and sent north to Siberia to work in labor camps. Living in primitive conditions, sub-zero temperatures, 80% of those people perished. My mom and her family, fast forward, eventually were released and wandered throughout East Asia for the rest of the war, where eventually my mother and my father met up. They were married in a displaced persons camp where my sister was born. And thanks to family that we already had living in Canada, were sponsored. And after the war, via a long and circuitous route, they finally landed in this great country. And I was proudly born Canadian.
That is an incredible story. We thank you so much for sharing it with us, Rick.
You know, really, the reason we're sharing this is because this story shapes who Lillian and I are and why we appreciate Canada so much. You know, both of our parents, all four of them, they worked very, very hard. Both Lillian and I grew up with very little, but Canada is truly a land of opportunity. And over the course of my business career, with a little bit of luck, a lot of hard work, we did well. And we decided we want to do something to thank Canada for being so good to us. And this led to, months of discussion between the two of us, how do you say thank you to a country? And I've always had a tremendous amount of respect and affinity for the Canadian military. And it is the most respected institution in Canada. So we started thinking about the men and women in uniform and what could we possibly do for them? Well,
now, while I respected the men and women in uniform, I realized I had much more in common with their stay-at-home families. Rick traveled a great deal while he was building the business, and he could be gone for up to 2 weeks out of every month, either North America, Europe, China, and the Persian Gulf. There were no cell phones, no FaceTime. Yes, we're that old. And huge time differences to contend with. He missed a lot of birthdays, recitals, and other milestone occasions. Excuse me. But here's the thing. While Rick was away in a few scary places, I knew no one was deliberately shooting at him and that he would come home in a couple of weeks safely.
I've said in speeches many times, but I'll say it again. I could not have accomplished what I did in business without knowing that Lillian always had my back at home, and she was looking after everything while I was working. Her and the kids' support were integral to everything I have achieved, and it wouldn't have happened without that home front support.
Military spouses and families not only know that their partners are away for long months at a time, but are in life and death situations daily, even while training. In 2020 alone, we lost 7 armed forces members in training missions. After thinking all this through, we decided that our way of thanking Canada for all the opportunities it gave us was thank the military families. We send their loved ones to protect us, who send their loved ones to protect us regardless of the discomfort or danger.
So what did you decide to do?
In 2017, there were 1,700 men and women deployed overseas at Christmas time. We sent each family a $50 prepaid Visa card with a note recognizing and thanking them for their contribution and sacrifice holding down the home front over the holidays while their family member was overseas protecting Canada.
And what was the reaction when they received these?
The reaction was incredible, much more than we ever thought would be possible.
Unanimously said this was the first time they had been recognized for their contribution to our military. Men and women in uniform told us that they could focus on their jobs because of the support they received from home, and they were thrilled that for the first time their families were getting recognition.
I was very fortunate. General Vance, who at the time was the Chief of Defense Staff, sent me overseas a couple of times to meet the troops. And now I have a window into the military world that many people don't. And I've spoken to Navy operators. You know, I say, what do you do? Well, my job is, you know, going out in a Zodiac at 3 in the morning with 3 or 4 other guys and sneaking aboard ships, smuggling contraband in the Persian Gulf. And, you know, they say they throw the grappling hook over and climb up, and on a regular basis, they're met with an AK-47 in the face. I was about a year and a half ago in the middle of the Kuwaiti desert, 50 degrees Celsius weather, watching an Air Force pilot captain who was about to fly supplies to Lebanon. And I watched him pre-flight his plane and his personal weapons, et cetera, and survival gear in case he got shot down over Syria. And, you know, when you see there, when you're out there with these guys, these are not opaque articles in the newspaper. I was with this airman who knowingly was flying over an area where he was regularly getting shot at. And I asked these, and so many other members of the forces who put their lives on the line every day, I asked these men and women, why do you do it? And the answer is always the same. It's my job. I'm a proud Canadian, and this is what the Canadian government has asked me to do, period. And, you know, today, most people don't know this, including a lot of my friends that I approached for some help and donations, and they asked me why we're doing this. We have troops today that are in Latvia, Lebanon, Israel, Kuwait, Egypt, in the Arabian Sea, in the Congo. They're doing counter narcotics missions in Jamaica. These are dangerous places. And even when we are advising, which is what we are technically doing, we're advising from the front, which is usually where the bullets start flying. And people have no idea that we have Canadian troops in danger right now somewhere.
Our troops step in to do everything, and they don't just go overseas. 6 months ago, the military were sent into the worst long-term facilities to look after our families. Most weren't trained for this, and some say they saw things then that they didn't even see on their worst days in Afghanistan. The conditions were terrible when they arrived. They exposed themselves to COVID. Then they had to go into quarantine for an extra 2 weeks away from their families. And the PTSD that is now surfacing is horrible. These men and women do their jobs overseas and around the corner to keep our families safe. TWS exists to help look after their families.
We know that your heart is with the military, but we also know you have a company to run. I'm just curious, how do you run TWS with your busy schedules?
Let's start that way. In the beginning, I was doing it part-time off the corner of my desk with the help of some of the folks in my office. But now we have a great team. Our daughter Stephanie fell in love with what we were doing, and she just needed to get involved, as she said. She then hired our CEO, Rick Seymour, and now the two of them are doing a fantastic job of taking the dream that Lillian and I had and growing it. And I think I can speak for both of us when I can say we're starting to feel like we are finally saying thank you to Canada in a meaningful way.
Anything else to add, Lillian?
Yes, I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank all the people who have believed in our efforts and who have generously contributed to TWS. We hope that those of you on the call will learn a little bit more about us today and will continue to support these wonderful families. Thank you.
Well, our thanks to you, Rick and Lillian Eckstein. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
And as
Lisa.
you're about to see, the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree. I would now like to bring in the Chief Operating Officer, Stephanie Shapiro, and our CEO, Rick Seymour.
Hi, I'm Rick Seymour, CEO of the Together We Stand Foundation. And I'm Stephanie Shapiro, COO of the Together We Stand Foundation.
Together We Stand was created to recognize, thank, and pay tribute to patriotic Canadian military families. They are as much part of the armed forces as those who serve on the front lines. However, they do not wear uniform. Multiple deployments, frequent moves, isolation, separation, fear of life for their loved ones. These are some of the unique challenges that Canada's great military families face daily. They do so proudly, with great resiliency, yet often without recognition or appreciation.
Our Canadian military families make sacrifices so that your family doesn't have to. They are here for us, so we need to be there for them. The time to properly acknowledge these families is here and now. We began in 2017 with Operation Care Package, where we sent gift boxes filled with coupons and gift cards donated by Corporate Canada to military families with a loved one deployed overseas during the holiday season.
The response to this initiative was overwhelmingly positive, with many of the recipient families saying that they had never before been acknowledged or thanked for their sacrifices. Building on the success of that year one, our organization continues to grow our Operation Care Package by including more meaningful, personal, impactful gifts for these diverse families across our country. In 2019, we decided it was time to find a way in which the organization and the country as a whole could thank all Canadian military families for their service to our country. So we set our sights on creating a nationally recognized day. We worked to have a unanimous consent motion passed through the House of Commons, producing Canada's first ever Military Family Appreciation Day. This is now celebrated each year on the third Friday in September.
2020 has been a challenging year for all of us, but for Canada's military families, the year has been particularly trying. Extended or unexpected deployments, an increase in imposed restrictions, support systems stripped away, and isolation on a scale never before experienced. Our military families were and continue to be placed under enormous stress.
While the country shut down, the military stood steadfast, ready to deploy away from home, but also here at home on the front lines. This was evident from the over 1,700 members of Operation Laser who were summoned to support the COVID efforts in long-term care facilities in Quebec and Ontario. Operation Globe was the repatriation of Canadians back to Canada at the onset of the pandemic. In response to families in crisis, be it need for emergency housing, counseling services, mental health support, or food procurement, TWS created Operation Emergency Fund, offering supplemental financial support to families finding themselves in hardship due to the pandemic. TWS stood with Canada's military families.
While Canada was in lockdown, military families lost their community. So we created the Command Post, a webcast series that featured military family members as guests. Knowing that military families are uniquely positioned to talk about isolation, we wanted to find them a way to connect with each other, to share their stories of resiliency with anyone who was feeling a sense of helplessness during the quarantine. Together We Stand stood with Canada's military families.
In April of this year, Canada lost 2 members of the RCAF and 4 members of the RCN with the horrific tragedy in the helicopter crash off the coast of Greece. This was shortly followed in May by the death of Captain Jennifer Casey, who lost her life in the snowbird accident after the iconic team embarked on a mission to help our country heal. Canada was reminded of the ultimate liability our brave families must face when their loved one leaves home in the name of service. Then, in October, Corporal James Troy lost his life on a training exercise in Wrangler.
These brave men and women left behind families, mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sons and daughters, and paid the ultimate price in the name of service to our country. In response to these tragedies, we created a social campaign to gather messages of support for the families and crew involved from Canadians across the country.
With these messages, we created custom flags, sending them to the families and crews directly affected by these devastating tragedies as a small token of appreciation. We hope that they will serve as an everlasting reminder that their sacrifices as a family were not made in vain. Together We Stand stood with Canada's military family.
With the core focus of our foundation aiming to raise awareness and amplify acknowledgement of Canada's military families, we celebrated Military Family Appreciation Day 2020 in a way that not even COVID could stop us. This year on MFAD, we created a digital campaign called #HomeFortChallenge, where we asked civilians, high-profile Canadians, the CAF community, politicians, and celebrities to build a fort share a video or note of thanks online to honor those who take care of things on the home front. The results were overwhelming and the participation was sensational. Together We Stand stood with Canada's military families.
Taking everything into account, this year has been nothing short of remarkable. Our families have stood strong, so have we. Together We Stand will continue to play the role of the only philanthropic organization to honor Canadian military families. This has been reinforced by the recognition of the Chief of the Defence Staff as an official philanthropic partner of the Canadian Armed Forces.
We will continue to remain agile, adjusting to the unique needs of the families as they arise, and ensuring that they're seen, heard, and acknowledged no matter where they come from. Together We Stand will always stand with Canada's military families. Will you?
I will. Earlier this year, I lent my voice and my support to Together We Stand. You know, it's hard to admit, but it is the truth. Myself and many Canadians, I don't think we ever really considered the impact on the families when their loved ones in the military are off defending our rights and freedoms, whether it be in a peacekeeping mission, a training exercise, or in a theater of war. And Together We Stand gives us Canadians, an opportunity to reach out and say, thank you. You matter. You are seen. You are heard. So now joining us live, our CEO, Rick Seymour, and COO, Stephanie Shapiro.
Thanks, Teresa. And I'd like to start by saying thank you to you and your team for hosting our event today and donating your time and service to TWS. It's been a wonderful experience and it's great to have you join our family. So thank you. Also, a huge thanks to all of our distinguished guests and speakers today. It's an honor to have you as part of this foundation as well. But finally, a big thank you to all of you watching at home and joining us today. Today is really about you, our amazing partners. Stephanie and I felt that it was imperative that we take the time and the opportunity to show you not only to thank you for your generous contributions to TWS, but to also show you the impact that you've had on Canadian military families. Your donations and support have demonstrated to us and the military community that you have a clear belief in what we stand for. And today we wanted to show you that we've delivered, or more importantly, that you've delivered.
So now that you've seen a little bit about what Together We Stand has accomplished over the past year, let me maybe explain to you why it is that you're staring at my face and Rick's face instead of my mom and dad's. As you know, my parents started the organization in 2017 by sending prepaid Visa gift cards to 1,500 families who had a loved one deployed overseas. And in early 2019, I got involved to take some of the workload off of my father, who, God bless him, is busier now in his retirement than when he was working 90 hours a week in his previous life. A few months into the job, with our sole focus being the holiday care packages, I started to realize that there's just so much more that Together We Stand could be doing to support military families. And frankly, my father wasn't going to be able to accomplish this with TWS being only a small part of his huge list of ways that he wanted to change the world. We really needed a leader for the organization and one that was going to bring vision and passion and help us grow. And it was around this time in November 2019 that I had my first opportunity to visit a military base. My mother and father wanted to thank some of the country's military families in person and to present them with their gifts and look them in the eye and just to honor them for everything that they were doing for our country. So I organized a trip to CFB Edmonton, where some of the families who had a loved one deployed happened to be posted. My mother and father and I flew out to the base along with one of our amazing donors, and much to Rick Seymour's argument, I dragged him along to help us with some of our marketing footage. And at this point, Rick Seymour had been with the foundation for almost 2 years in the role of TWS's marketing lead, but really lending so much more of himself to the cause. He'd spent 12-hour days packing with us, gift boxes for the families. He spent way more time working on material for us than he was billing us for. And he was on the phone with me for almost a daily basis, just really acting as my sounding board. And we had a great event in Edmonton, meeting some of the amazing families. And afterwards, Rick and my mom and my dad and I sat down for a bit of a debrief. And rather than Rick Seymour just sort of congratulating us on the event, he started peppering us with some questions. Was Together We Stand really hitting the mark? Do we know that our packages that we're giving to the families are containing gifts that have impact? What is it that these families really needed? And what are their challenges? Do the challenges vary across land, sea, and air, or coast to coast? Why aren't we talking to these families? We need to talk to these families because we ourselves are not military families. We needed to stop making assumptions about what it is that they might need or want. So when I let my dad know that it was time for him to step down as CEO to find someone who could devote themselves full time to the job, I knew that I had found the right person. Rick's first day was January 4th, 2020, 3 months before the end of the world. And despite everything that the world threw at us last year, I couldn't be prouder of the direction that we've taken. And hopefully today's event will give you some insight into what we've been working on. So as I affectionately like to say, I fired my father, sorry, Dad, and replaced one Rick with a younger version. So it took Rick all of an hour to accept our offer, and he's hit the ground running. Although, Rick, I'm wondering if you've since regretted your decision because of all the time I spend bossing you around at this point.
Yeah, I guess in hindsight, I should have taken more than an hour to make my decision with all the abuse that I take from you on a daily basis. But, all kidding aside, it's certainly been one of the easiest and best decisions I've ever had to make. So thank you for the kind words. Steph and myself, as well as the vast majority of the team, as mentioned, are not military members ourselves. So by taking our number one rule of no assumptions to heart, one of the very first things that we had to make sure that we were going to do was talk to as many military families across this great country as possible. So from coast to coast to coast, we visited bases when we could do that, military family resource centers, pivoted to having Zoom calls. We went to real military events when we could, and had as many conversations with those who lived the life every single day. I will always remember the first time that a military family member came up to me, thanked me, and said, "Thank you for seeing and acknowledging me." I was blown away, and I knew we were onto something special. It goes without saying that this is not the last time something like this has happened. We've been told that no other military foundation is having these candid talks with the families and within the military chain of command. We do this by building relationships from the ground up, as well as the top down, and by reinforcing that we're here to be a resource and not a redundancy. Even in the midst of a pandemic, but we've decided to embrace technology, and we've continued to have these wonderful conversations and forge these meaningful relationships. A year later, we're fortunate enough to be able to call so many amazing military families and Canadian Armed Forces men and women our friends.
And it's one thing to have the conversations and respond, but it's really another thing to listen and to act. And it's through these conversations that our programs have been created and refined. The programs are based on what families have told us that they need, instead of us just thinking that we know what they want. And we've been so fortunate to have families open up about their raw, real experiences and challenges. They've told us about limited access to affordable housing and childcare, mental health challenges, deployments, reintegrating with a partner after a deployment, or living in separate parts of the country for a year. The incredible emotional conversations that Rick and I have had took us down a path to determine what TWS really needed to be. What issues could we address now? What did we already have in place? And what could we really do to have the biggest impact on military families?
The Armed Forces members are effective at many things, and thankfully so. But one of the things they're not so great at is taking care of the families. And they'll tell you this themselves. We've heard this directly from the chain of command across all environments. But we've also learned that happy family leads to an efficient troop, and that a supported family helps provide the military with better recruitment and retention. So over the past year, Steph and I determined that we need to hit 5 key objectives in order to have the greatest impact on military families. 1, talk to our families, talk to the CAF, talk to the MFRCs, talk to government officials. But as Steph said, more importantly, listen, find out where the gaps are, find the families slipping through the cracks, give these families a platform to share their voices and create programs to serve the unaddressed needs. 2, get acute emergency financial assistance to military families in crisis and take away the barriers that might have impeded them from accessing the funding that they so desperately needed. 3, find a way to honor the families who lost their loved ones serving our country. We needed to let them know that their country's rallied around them and that they have a grateful community, especially in a time such as COVID-19 and the pandemic. 4, we wanted to educate as many Canadians as possible that we have a strong, resilient military, and those military members have families that serve this great country and make so many sacrifices on our behalf. 5th, and perhaps more importantly, we need to thank these brave families for all that they do to support their family members in keeping this country safe. We sit here today with the belief that we've achieved these goals, and it's helped lay the foundation for who we are today and who we'll be moving forward.
And in 2021 and beyond, we're committed to growing our past and current programs. We want to improve our delivery. We want to generate more reach. We want to have more of an impact, and we want to run as lean as possible because it's critical to us that the dollars that come in our doors get straight to the hands of the families that need it.
It's been a tremendous honor and a privilege to lead this foundation. As Prime Minister Harper said, there's a huge sense of responsibility. Yet it's also been extremely humbling to meet so many incredibly resilient and brave families that sacrifice so much for Canada. We look forward to growing the TWS story, and we hope you'll join us as we grow.
Thank you all to our amazing partners that are joining us here today. We couldn't do it without you, and we hope that you'll enjoy the next few speakers that are coming up. We have some incredible past and serving military members that are going to give you some perspective on what military family life is really like. So thank you, and Teresa, thanks for everything you're doing for us today.
My pleasure. You're a great bunch to work with. And just a reminder, folks, if you have any questions for anyone, please feel free to put them into the chat, and we will get to them right at the end of our following speakers. So our next person started off as an aircraft mechanic in the forces. Then he went on to have an illustrious career, ending up as Chief Wing Warrant Officer at 8 Wing Trenton. He is now the chairperson for the Military Family Advisory Committee for TWS. Would you please welcome Troy Zorro? Sir, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity here. And to those that are watching from their homes or their offices, thank you for everything that you do in empowering military families and enabling TWS. So if I may, if you'll permit, just a little bit about me. I was born into a military family. My father served in the military as well. My wife also served. She served for 31 years, June. She was a finance officer. And when she retired in September of 2019, she was the Director of General Budget for the Canadian Armed Forces. Together, we've had two wonderful, resilient, grown children who are now wonderful citizens. And being a member of a service couple is unique in that we've each had an opportunity to deploy, but we've also had an opportunity to stay home while our spouse was deployed. When we are deployed or away for an extended period of time, knowing that our families are well taken care of, that's empowering to military members. That's our first concern, is to make sure that our families are well looked after. So a little bit about why TWS. In August of 2019, I retired after 33 and a half years service, and I was looking for a sense of purpose, a way to give back. In the past, I'd worked with military family resource centers to the point where, I was a chairperson for a board of directors. Why TWS specifically? In 2017, when I was serving in 8 Wing Trenton as the Wing Chief Warrant Officer, the first I heard of TWS was when we were giving the visa cards to the families of deployed members. And I was amazed at the kindness and generosity of the foundation and the donors. My sense is that there are many organizations who support and acknowledge military members and veterans, but the family is unique. And TWS, the fact that TWS honors and supports the military family, that was something that I felt was important for me to get involved with, given that families are the real strength in the uniform. So a little bit about the Military Advisory Committee, we fondly refer to as MFAC. It's a team brought together to represent military families from across this country. We have several members now, again, representing Army, Navy, Air Force, and we are coast to coast almost. We're growing the committee, but we are representing military families. Our role is to really provide advice and guidance to TWS. So it's an organization keenly interested in military families, and MFAC helps bring credibility to the organization by having this diverse representation. For me, diversity is key on the MFAC. It's my first goal is to make sure that we've developed this committee that is truly representative, because the definition of family for military members, it's very broad. So the impact of TWS, again, as I mentioned earlier, and as we've already heard this morning, when a member is away or deployed, their first concern is always their family. Knowing that their family is well taken care of, that allows that serving member to be fully employable and fully deployable. All operations, such as Operation Care Package, help to acknowledge the families and the situation and their situation. And quite frankly, it brings joy to these families around Christmas time. I can attest that Christmas is not an easy time to be deployed from your military family. So this mechanism, this operation that TWS employs is extremely impactful. Again, working with the Padre Network and MFRCs to help fill in any gap areas that they have. And just the very fact that TWS brings honor to families by recognizing their service, their sacrifice, and their commitment. So just in closing, on behalf of the Military Family Advisory Committee and military families, thank you for what you do in supporting TWS and military families. I look forward to continuing the great work of MFAC in partnership with TWS. So thank you very much.
That's great, Mr. Zorro. You know, wherever our Canadian military is in the world, there's usually a chaplain or a padre to ease the way. Not only do they conduct worship services, but they provide counseling, a lot of help. They also combat stress support. They are the boots on the ground. They are the heart and soul of the military. And joining us now from our base is Captain Rabbi Glogauer. Good morning, Padre. How are you?
Good morning, Teresa. Thank God I'm doing really well. How are you?
I know it's been tough connecting with you on that base. I'm so glad that you're there and we're seeing that wonderful face.
Fantastic. Well, it's great. It's great to be here and to be able to help TWS in any way possible.
Could you tell us a little bit about your journey through the military?
Sure. I've been in the Canadian Armed Forces since 2017, first posted to 17 Wing in Winnipeg. I then was posted to CFB Halifax, and now I'm the wing chaplain in 12 Wing Shearwater. I'm truly, sorry?
Oh, go ahead, Rabbi.
Right. I see myself as truly being really fortunate to be in the Canadian Armed Forces. I'm fifth generation military. My parents and all my family before me served. I'm the first chaplain, but I'm also the first military member to serve in Canada.
Wow. Now, you know firsthand about the stress that it takes on a military family because yours is coping sometimes with your times when you've got to go away, right?
Yes, so since 2017, I've been posted away from my family. I have, thank God, two beautiful university students in Toronto, children in Toronto who are in university, who are with my wife in Toronto, who's running a private practice out of home. I have a daughter married with our new grandson in New York. But since I've been in the military, it's obviously been our way to be able to contribute and thank the country for allowing us to be able to come in. So that's my contribution. And part of it is that my family are extremely supportive. It is a family service unit that we all together are serving our country.
What has been your experience with the impact of what TWS has had?
So when I was posted, I was actually posted in March last year amongst the whole COVID storm into 12 Wing Shearwater. And when I arrived, there was this great big box and, wanted to know where it was. And so I opened up the box and it was this letter from Stephanie. So I gave her a call and asked, what are these boxes? They look, really well packaged. It looks really nice. What is Together We Stand? And she told me exactly what they were. And it was amazing to be able to have such a resource on the ground. The Operation Care Packages obviously were from the December batch that were a few left over, and the intention, I guess, was for Stephanie to come, but because of COVID, wasn't able to actually come to Shearwater. And then we had the Stalker 22 tragedy in April. When I contacted Stephanie and told her I had all these people, I was meeting with a lot of people, a lot of different needs, emotional challenges, just dealing with this heavy tragedy that was affecting our area so much. I started to hand out these care packages, and to see the impact that they had on, people who were coming for support, right? Normally when they're coming to the chaplain, it's to be able to help with some challenges and speaking a lot with the families. And often, because a lot of the members, we have a helicopter detachment on every frigate who was out, the Fredericton was was out at sea. To be able to give something to an unexpected family member who is just there to be able to have support was truly, emotional. Often the packages are presented and received with tears of joy, and just, the gratitude that there's an anonymous person who recognizes the family's sacrifice while that other member is being deployed somewhere in the world.
So those were Operation Care Packages. You've also had some experience in helping out with the emergency funding that you have received from TWS. Can you tell us about some of those stories and the people that it's helped?
Sure. I mean, it was an amazing initiative because often, when family members are coming to see the chaplain, most of the time it is for that emotional support. We have medical programs, we have financial programs to be able to help with family members who might need a little bit extra. But for the most part, those are really limited for the issues that come my way. Especially during COVID, a lot of the pressures on double income families, we found a lot of family members who the non-military member is being laid off or isn't working. So that extra income that's needed hasn't been coming forth. And often there are additional unexpected emergencies that take place. I've been able to use the emergency funds to be able to kind of just help a little bit, get them through, that little crisis point. I had some members who, one who had a family fire. We were able to help with, that insurance deductible for them to be able to get their possessions back in order. I met a military member who had an unfortunate car accident. So to be able to help with their insurance deductible. We had families who, one of them had a severe illness and had to stop working. So to be able to just help them a little bit with some of those additional utility bills that came, and how do we get extra money to be able to support the other extended family members. Another family who, with one of the laid off members, they just, wanted to get some, Christmas gifts for the family, and their money was all tied up because they're going towards bills. But just to be able to give them something a little bit extra for their family, to let them know that TWS is there to be able to help them and care for that extended family. I've seen so many emotional stories just where they're coming for the support and I'm giving them that support, but just a little bit extra just to be able to help them has made an incredible impact, at least in the base, in the wing where I'm working.
Thank you for sharing those stories, because we have a lot of wonderful donors that are on this Zoom presentation today. And, it's good for everyone to hear where their hard-earned dollars are going. Could you just wrap up, Padre, by telling us how you feel about the resources that you're able to get from Together We Stand?
Right. So I have to tell you, one of the most amazing things from the Together We Stand is that it doesn't come with a lot of paperwork. My hands really aren't tied. There's a lot of trust that they have to understand that what we're really dealing with are on the ground issues that need immediate action. So I don't have, I don't have a lot of paperwork. All I need to do is access, TWS, who've been amazing. Whenever I come back to Toronto and leave, they always have another package to be able to send with me to be able to provide that support. But even their packages are very well thought out. They're really in the mindset of what do these families need to be able to, let them know there are anonymous members throughout our Canadian society who do care for them, and they want to express their thanks for the service and the sacrifice that these families are making. So to TWS and to all of those donors, thank you so much for recognizing the sacrifice and for helping in those areas that sometimes the families need just a little bit extra. So thank you.
Padre, you've given us amazing insight this morning. Thanks to you. You have a wonderful day. And now we don't have to worry about this internet connection anymore, right?
There we go. Thank you. So I'll get back to teaching my students, and just thank you so much for the opportunity for me to be able to share.
Captain Rabbi Glogauer, we thank you.
Thank you.
Our final speaker began his military career as a helicopter pilot. And I have to tell you, he and his family know firsthand about the sacrifice and the courage that it takes to be in the military, because over 39 years of service, they moved 16 times. Joining us now is Lieutenant General Retired Alain Parent. Hello, sir.
Hello and good morning, everyone, and thank you for the for everybody that's participating on this call. It's nice to see that there's so many care and have the interest of military families.
Yes, absolutely. There's been some amazing stories that have come out, and you know, you're our final speaker today, and so we've saved the best for last, right?
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Yes. Well, sir, you know, I think so because you and I had a chance to talk, and this has been a long time that you served. So, were you in the military for 39 years, or is that how long you've been married?
So I've been in the military for 39 years, serving with the Royal Canadian Air Force, and out of those 39 years, I've been married for 30 years now. 28 years when I retired in June of 2018. With my lovely wife Gualda, and 25 years with our children Matthew and Ryan.
So, you guys went through a lot of moves over your military career, didn't you?
Yes, they sure have. So my career has taken me to see the world, mostly in turmoil areas. Although personally I wasn't deployed for long tours, I can tell you that, for example, I went in and out of Afghanistan 7 times for various period of time. And I can tell you that every time the family is on edge when you go into combat operations or a zone where there is dangers. Another thing that touched my family is that for 3 years I served at the Canadian Expeditionary Force Command. That was a command where we were in charge of all the deployed operations. And I was there from 2008 to 2011. And it touched the family because my wife and I were woken up in the middle of the night when the phone rang by our bedside way too often, when one of our own paid the ultimate sacrifice, which started the process of next of kin notification and the very painful grief of military family. At one point during my time at CEFCOM, we had over 10,000 troops deployed under our command in Iceland with NATO, in Haiti doing humanitarian aid during the big earthquake, in Libya, Kosovo, Arabian Gulf, Afghanistan. When you put that in perspective, that was a lot of family members living on edge day to day back here in Canada. Their family separations not only on deployment, but also on exercise, on temporary duty, on professional military education course. 1 year when I was not on deployment, I was away from home over 180 days cumulative. The other additional pressure, as you mentioned, are frequent postings, dislocations from friends and family, multiple schools, multiple curriculum to cope with in different provinces, in some cases even in different countries. In our case, like you said, we moved 16 times. So without the unwavering support from my family, I would have never finished my career as a Lieutenant General and as Acting Vice Chief of Defense Staff. I probably would have culminated at the rank of Major with a much shorter career.
I'm curious, you have joined our team with Together We Stand. What touched your heart? Why did you decide to link up with TWS?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Rick and Lillian for setting us up. And then I came in contact with Rick on one of our trips visiting the troop, and he was explaining me in 2017 what he wanted to do, and I was pretty impressed because it dawned on me that there was a lot of organization out there that was supporting the family members, especially through the Afghanistan years. But we never had one organization that really thought about the importance of the family. So it's because of the importance of the family, and it's really the only charity that's focused on the appreciation of the family. When I was commander of one wing and I had the honor to command them, I had to set the scheme of maneuver for UN for deploying our helicopter forces to Afghanistan. And I knew it was going to be a long haul, and I knew that we had limited pilots and technicians and flight engineers and support personnel to go through the mission. So I did my mission analysis, and I figured if I want the troops to be resilient and be effective in combat, I have to make sure that the family behind is behind the troops, and that the troops don't have to worry about the family is taken care of. And then this is where I came out with the fact that the family was my center of gravity. The center of gravity is the one thing that the military brought their strength and resilience is the family. So I tried exposing to them to different scheme of maneuvers like like industry does. Let's say you do in and out of theater every 56 days instead of every 9 months. And in the end, they came back and they said, we don't want to have a reunion and a separation every 2 months. Let's go out there. Let's support our families and do our mission. So why I joined in the end is because it allows me to give back to the current serving member and their family in honor of the support my own family has given me through almost 4 decades.
I really appreciate your insight. Do you have any final thoughts for us today?
The impact of TWS is huge. Knowing that things are taken care of on the home front, knowing they are also appreciated, knowing there are organizations out there that supports them. For the member, you need to go into action knowing that things are okay at home, that the family support you. It gives the member resilience, peace of mind, so they can concentrate on the job at hand and coming back home safely. And for this, military families deserve our gratitude and appreciation. So thank you to all of you who are involved with TWS. You are making a difference.
Sir, thank you so much for your kind thoughts and your talk today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So that is going to bring us to the conclusion of today's show. Before we leave, we would like to bring up our CEO, Rick Seymour, and our COO, Stephanie Shapiro, for some final thoughts today on, I guess, guys, on what's gone down today. And here we are. We worked hard, but now we're at the finish line.
Well, thanks, Teresa. And really, we just wanted to make today about a thank you for our donors, our partners, the individuals who are really making all of this possible. We know that these virtual events are not the same as being able to see each other face to face, but we really wanted to take the time to thank you. You are the reason that Canadian military families are being seen and being heard and being acknowledged in a way that they haven't before.
Yeah, and you know, as Steph mentioned, I think we'd all rather be doing this in person and be able to see each other and greet each other and all that. But you know, at least we're fortunate enough to have the technology that we do today to be able to do this. I'd be remiss if we didn't just quickly highlight some other special people that make the TWS mission possible. First and foremost, none of this would be happening without the support and unwavering commitment of our founders, Rick and Lillian Eckstein. Rick and Lillian, you guys are extremely generous, and the vast majority of our costs are covered by you, and our admin costs for 2020 were 5.9% of the entire operating budget. This helps us keep our operating costs extremely low and ensures that our dollars from our donors and our partners get directly into the hands of militaries as much as possible. So Rick, Lillian, again, as always, thank you for all that you do for us and the military families across this country.
We also are extremely fortunate. We have an exceptional group of distinguished Canadians, such as former Prime Minister Harper, that lend their names to our honorary council. So we thank them. We have, Troy represented just one of them today, but we have 8 members of our Military Family Advisory Council that volunteer their time and their resources every month, and they are the ones that are helping us shape our programs and our messaging, because they're really bringing the diverse voices to the table. We want to make sure that we're thanking our incredible board of directors who lend their time and their expertise and their passion to the foundation, our committed group of volunteer TWS staff, our incredible connections within the CAF community, and finally, the individuals who donated their time and services for today's event to make this event possible. Lori Heller was the individual who helped us coordinate part of this event. EJSE donated their services so that we could have this amazing production value. And Teresa, you've been just tremendous, donating all of your services and your time today, spending hours and hours looking at my face and Rick's face and texting with us. So you've just been tremendous. So we really, really appreciate you. So thank you, Teresa. And you're stuck with us now as being part of the TWS team.
Yeah, no, and finally, I'd just like to say we've been told, as you've heard, that no other organization is out there doing what we're doing. And it's really our privilege, Stephanie and I, as the leaders of that organization, to be able to do that. But to you, our partners, you've chosen to be part of this organization. You're part of our Together We Stand family, and we hope that you'll walk away from today's event feeling proud of your contributions. That being said, there's still so much more to do. There's over 80,000 regular force members and reserve members across this country, and 250,000 dependent family members across Canada. And we're merely just scratching the surface in terms of the impact and programs and acknowledgement that we can provide. So we hope that we can count on your continued support to reach even more families in 2021 and beyond. So thank you.
Our Canadian military families make sacrifices so that my family and your family don't have to. So let's keep giving them the support and the thanks that they deserve. So thanks for everybody for joining us today. And thanks, Teresa.
We hope that you have enjoyed this program and the insight into the work that Together We Stand does. From their big hearts to your generous hearts, we say thank you and so long.